back to another episode. So I obviously have made some pretty serious progress. I've got the whole suspension system mocked up. This is not at all bolted together, and it is going to be coming apart again for some renovations. We'll get into that. But first I kind of wanted to show you why. So it's all put together right now, ish. So what I wanted to do is mock it up and kind of take some measurements and see where my alignment settings are, because obviously I'm trying to do something fairly specific with this. I really want the truck to handle as well as it possibly can. And in order to get really good handling, your alignment plays a huge, huge role in that. And so we need a lot more camber than, which is your how much the tire, fits into the wheel well. I think I forgot to explain that in the last video. But yeah, so we want a little more camber than your average, passenger car. And we want a lot more caster. Caster is the rake, so basically from this ball joint to this ball joint and the relation this way. If you think about like a shopping cart has an enormous amount of negative caster. So the top is further forward from the bottom. And a motorcycle or a bicycle has positive camber or caster. So the rake is in the opposite direction. The more caster you have, the more stable the car is going to be, particularly at high speed. The less caster you have, the more nimble and quick turning the car is going to feel. It's why, like a shopping cart, obviously you just like nudge it a direction and the wheel flips around and goes wherever you want. Whereas a motorcycle or a bicycle obviously wants to stay straight. So that's why they've got it raked out the other way. So we want lots of caster. And the reason we want lots of caster is as your wheel turns and goes through the suspension, caster is kind of helping to determine where your camber is. And you want more negative camber for good handling, because as your car is heaving over and leaning in the turns, if your wheel is kind of, angled in a little bit and the car is leaning hard, it actually straightens out. So what you end up with is that the tire is kind of planted straight on the ground as much as possible, and you get more rubber contact, which means you have better handling. So we want as much positive caster as we can possibly manage, which gives us better negative camber during turning. And then we're going to want just a little bit of toe out, just a touch. That's kind of the overall goal of the alignment. The way that Bibani coilovers are set up, they're tuned fairly well for street driving as far as your adjustments are concerned. So right now I've got this upper control arm cranked in as tight as it'll go without binding. So this is the maximum camber setting that these come with at approximately the ride height. This is obviously not, exact science here, but on the little gauge here, it shows we are at negative 0.7 degrees of camber. That's fine for a street car. There's nothing really, necessarily wrong with that. But we're going for a lot more than that. So it is going to wear up my tires a little bit faster, but it's going to make the truck handle better. And considering this truck goes all of 3,000 miles a year, maybe, I mean, tires on this thing tend to go bad due to age before they wear out. So I'm not that worried about tire wear, if I'm being honest. I'm more worried about how the car feels to drive, because obviously this thing's going to be, it's for fun. So the more fun I can have with it, the better. It's doing its job better. So in any case, because we're maxed out here, and by the way, the only way I was even able to get this much camber is by flipping the control arm over compared to how I've seen most people use it. So the welded part is at the front, where most of the time when I've seen people do this install, it's on the back. That gave me a little bit more caster. It gave me a little bit more camber. And after talking to Jason, he said, it's fine to do that. This thing is symmetrical in the regard that it doesn't care which orientation it's in. So I got a little bit more adjustment out of it by doing that. But obviously we want a little more. So now we're in this is going to be a little harder than we expected area. Because this thing's cranked all the way down and I don't have enough adjustment, there's really only one other reasonable way to get more camber, and that's with the lower control arm. So what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to be cutting the control arm in half, adding about a ½ inch of length by, I've still got the stock control arm, the original ones. I'm going to section those out, and so I'm going to cut out a little ½ inch section of that, and we're going to weld that in. So it'll increase the track width of the truck by about a ½ inch, which is fine. Actually, it's kind of better. That actually helps a few other things. So it's going to make the truck about a ½ inch wider in the front, and what it does is it kicks the bottom of that of the suspension out a little bit further, so that we have a little bit more camber. So that's the current mission. I've done a fair amount since the last video as well, as far as, you know, finish welding. I got all of this stuff welded up. The upper coilover mounts are welded up. We got the block off plates finish welded and ground down smooth, and just kind of did some like tidying up as far as that's concerned. Both control arms are now made. I think when I was in the last update, I only had this one, I guess, put together with the caster arm back here. So the other side is now finished. And I've also welded in the reinforcement plate on the bottom side of the lower control arms. Thankfully, none of that is going to be affected by lengthening them. I finished all this work prior to knowing I was going to have to do that, and for a minute I was like, crap. Am I going to have to undo all the work I just did? No. It looks like the modification is going to be happening a little bit further down, you know, away from all of that other stuff. So it should be completely fine. I'm not worried about it. And I also still need to change the lower mount position of the coilover. You can tell right now I don't have a spring on this, and there's a good reason for that. If I put a spring on here, it would end up interfering with the upper control arm mount. It's too close to it. So I'm going to pull the coilover out so it's at a little bit more of an angle, a little more rake. So that still needs to happen as well. So there's still a decent amount of work left to do, but it is genuinely coming along. If I wanted to, I could technically put the weight of the truck on this suspension as it is. I wouldn't be able to drive it, but it would hold itself up if I put the springs on it. I just finished cutting all this so that it's, you know, smooth, and then that's going to get welded on in its place, and then I'll weld on the new tabs for the coilover mounts. I got the steering stop cut off, and then I also started processing these. I need to do some of the same work to the new ones, but I got the steering arms cut off, and then I cut the center out of them. The reason I did that is I'm going to section this. I'm going to cut a piece of it out, and then that's going to end up getting welded in about here. So what I'm going to end up having to do is, you can see this nice reinforced plate. I'm going to cut this out as well, and that way I can reinforce the splice from the inside. So I'm gonna put some extra reinforcing steel up in here to make sure that it's good and strong, and then that'll get extended. These bolt holes are where the arms that went forward, the old caster arms used to mount, but since we're not using them, since we got this, they're no longer necessary, so they come off. So that's what I'm doing. and gentlemen, is a suspension system. And to prove that it's a suspension system, I would like for you to notice the jack and the fact that it's supporting the weight of the truck. It's real now. I still have to extend the lower control arm, but point is, that's a suspension system.